Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.
Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in Studio West, the Relief Factor studio out on the West Coast, not yet ravaged by fire, and that is a blessing, but boy, oh boy, what a 2-week period of time. I'm so pleased on this, the Hillsdale Dialogue. And those of you who are new to this program, because it's moved to afternoon drive in the East and noon to 3 in the West, I've been doing the Hillsdale Dialogue with my guest, Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, for maybe a decade. And what the ironic or not ironic, coincidental situation is, Dr. Arnn and I met at a Coco's in Southern California in 1989, and we have been friends since. And he knows California, and I know California, and we know what's going on here. So we put aside this book, The Republic of Plato, which we've been working through and will continue to work through, to talk today about the catastrophe that is California. Good morning, Dr. Arnn, or good evening. It's going to take me a while to shift my language, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, welcome to the new time.
I am so happy to have you being introduced to everyone. Let's start at the beginning. Everything Hillsdale is at hillsdale.edu. All of our prior dialogues beginning with Job and Homer and going all the way up to the present are found at hughforhillsdale.com. Dr. Arnn, would you tell people about Hillsdale College, since it's the first hour of the new time frame? There might be some deaf, dumb, and blind person out there who is finally hearing about Hillsdale for the first time through technology. Tell them about the college that is the Lantern of the North.
It's a 180-year-old college. It was founded by people who became friends of Abraham Lincoln and important in his cause. It is old-fashioned. That is, half the time everybody's studying the same thing, every football player and everybody else. And that means you study chemistry and biology and physics and math, and you study history and literature and philosophy and all that. It's fun. It's a great place. We enjoy ourselves here. We don't fight much. We argue all the time. It doesn't take any money from the government, manages to survive having done that, and it's what college is supposed to be, and so that's what it is.
Well,
we teach
180 years. How do you last 180 years without federal money?
Well, in our case, it was lucky in some ways. The federal money started about 1960. It's an innovation. It's now a serious percentage of all the money that all the colleges get. And in the beginning, it was not very much. And we started out not doing that. And step by step, we kept not doing it. Had to figure out, first of all, it was, should we take this money? I have the minutes from the 1967 board meeting, where a task force led by the richest man on our board said we should take the money. And there's a long discussion, the longest minutes in 180 years of minutes, and they voted 16-3 not to do it. And and then they said a prayer for the college.
The longest meeting in the history of the college was over whether or not to take federal money?
It's 11 single-space typed pages. They typed up the minutes, and the man who was the head of the task force, a famous man, but I won't say his name, and he's a good guy, right? And he said, by the way, we can take the money because it's never been our policy to discriminate on race. We're an abolitionist college. Frederick Douglass spoke here twice. Now, of course, there are mixed signals from the government now because there's a Supreme Court case that says you can't do that. But the Department of Education and the federal money is tied to counting by color, and these diversity engines are subsidized and commanded to some extent by federal regulation. So we sort of escaped that and have always done that
Yeah,
it's
Dr.
cool.
Arnn, on Tuesday of this week, I spoke to Legatus in Southern California, which is the Catholic business people's group that is really big hitters and very successful people, and they're very devout Orthodox Catholics. And I recommended them. Hillsdale is a Christian college, and it seems to be increasingly a Catholic Christian college, though not officially so, and that their kids, their grandchildren all ought to go to Hillsdale because if they want an education, they should do it. Are you yet formally been adopted by the Diocese of what, Grand Rapids? I'm not sure what diocese you're in.
Lansing, and the man's name is Boyer, and he's a buddy. I like him. And yeah, we've got Catholics running out our ears here, and we don't really count that way, and we don't care. The sort of official doctrine of the college is mere Christianity.
I know, I'm joshing you. Although you do have the most beautiful chapel in the Midwest.
We did. Well, we have the most beautiful chapel in the world. We have the most beautiful classical chapel built in the last 100 years.
Well, Duncan Stroika did a fine job at Thomas Aquinas College in the central part of California. So I haven't compared them yet. I did love the chapel. It's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So I wanted people to understand it is a traditional liberal arts college with a very, very strong Christian bent that is open to people of all faiths, including those who are agnostic, atheists, or some other faith tradition. But Dr. Arnn and his team are running the real deal. Let us move then, Dr. Arnn. Oh, by the way, application. It's pretty hard to get in. So I don't want to sugarcoat this for people. It's pretty hard to get into Hillsdale. How hard?
Well, last year we took 19%, I think. We'd take more, but it's the nature of a liberal arts college that it has to be small so we can know each other. We're about 1,650 students. We have some graduate programs. They too are small and complicated and hard. The college is very hard. And a lot of people want to come here because of that, because if kids want to grow, they have to suffer and they have to work. And they come here to do that. You have to sign an honor code to come. A mitigation is we sponsor around about 100 charter schools around the country, and we teach online courses. I think the latest number who've taken those is 4.7 million people. And we send a monthly printed publication to something over 6.5 million people. All that is kind of crazy. Those courses and this publication called Imprimis are all free, and we don't ask you for money in them. We like to say we don't raise money here, people give it. And thank those who do. It's important. But they do because they're volunteers. And the thing about the Hillsdale College is everybody understands this. I don't work with anybody, study with anybody who's not a volunteer. I get my authority from the people who study and work here and from the Board of Trustees. And that means I don't really have to order anybody around. We all agree to the ultimate purposes of the college. Upon entry, the students through an honor code, the ultimate purposes of the college can be summarized as freedom, faith, learning, and character. And you have to agree to cooperate with the college toward those things. Doesn't mean you have to believe anything in particular, because if you're 18 years old and you go to college, you're going to start reading a bunch of great books, and you'll be changing your mind every day. You have to believe that the activity is worthy and to be protected. You also have to agree that you will on all occasions be civil to anybody else with a view to developing friendship with everybody else. And so we get on here. We don't lock up our stuff. We disagree all the time. I mean, every class, right? So I teach a lot of things here, but one of the things I teach is Aristotle. Sit down and read the first paragraph. People should do that. You and I have talked about Aristotle at length in these courses. Sit down and read the first paragraph of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. It's one of the greatest books ever written, as is The Republic, which we're talking about right now. And it's a beautiful book and powerful, but it takes some work. And that means if there's 20 students in the class, there'll be 25 opinions at the beginning. And all 25 will change their opinions while the class goes. And the way you get to the truth of the matter, which is the object, is to talk about that. And so that's, I do not like all this concentration in college on you have a right to your opinion. You do have a right to your opinion, but your purpose is to make it more truthful. And that means you can't be standing on that right all the time. You got to figure things out.
Hold it right there, Dr. Arnn. We're going to go to a break. I want everyone to remember, you've got to figure things out. That's what we do on this show. That's what we do on the Hillsdale Dialogue. You ought to go read everything at hillsdale.edu. You ought to watch their courses. And, of course, you ought to watch the Hugh Hewitt Show. All of the Hillsdale Dialogues. That's a great place to start to figure it out. Hugh for Hillsdale.com. Hugh for Hillsdale.com. Stay tuned. Dr. Arnn will be right back.
It's no secret that Americans are more divided than ever. And it's not just over what policies will improve our great country. No, it's over whether America is great at all, whether America deserves our love. That's why Imprimis is so important. Imprimis looks at the issues of the day from a constitutional perspective, reminding citizens always of our great heritage of liberty. For more than 50 years, Imprimis has featured speeches from the smartest conservative thinkers and writers at Hillsdale events. These days, Hillsdale publishes people like Molly Hemingway, Andy Puzder, Harmeet Dillon, and Chris Rufo. Over 6.4 million American households and businesses receive Imprimis absolutely free. And I urge you to sign up for it today at no charge. To get your free lifetime subscription, go to hillsdale.edu/lifetime right now. Or text the word Imprimis to 71844 and we'll send you a link to sign up for your free lifetime subscription. That's IMPRIMIS to 71844.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All the dialogues at hughforhillsdale.com. I'm talking with Dr. Larry Arnn now, and I'm back at work. My first week of the new semester. And I have about 20 students in First Amendment, 14th Amendment class. And I began by saying, we are friends, or I hope to become friends. We must not be enemies. And we must engage in civil discourse. And it's all, there are three origin stories here, mine, yours, and the Constitution's, and we're going to learn them all. And we begin. Yeah. I spend a lot of time in the first week making sure I know the backstories of the students, because it matters. It matters a great deal whether you just lost your home in Pacific Palisades or Sylmar, Altadena, or Pasadena, or if you come from dirt poor poverty and in some obscure place in the middle of the United States or from abroad, because there is a robust international presence at Hillsdale. It matters, but you have to approach it in a certain way or you won't get to friendship, and it's not magic, it's work.
Yeah, and see, the other thing is you need each other. You know, we human beings, our special gift, only we can do it, is we can talk. It's just a synonym for human reason. And so we learn better together. And that's why you have colleges.
Well, that is hillsdale.edu. Right. Go watch all of the video courses. Now, I must turn with Dr. Arnn to the crisis, because he is a Golden Stater. Whether or not he'll admit it. He's from Arkansas originally, but he spent a lot of time out here with his buddies at Claremont Graduate School and Claremont Undergrad and the Claremont Institute before he went off to Hillsdale 25 years ago. And I'm wondering, as you watch from Michigan, Dr. Arnn, what do you this is a catastrophe beyond anything I've ever seen. What do you think?
Well, I was looking at film of some neighborhoods, Pacific Palisades, and it's, of course, one of the most beautiful places on earth, and it's burned to the ground, and lots of it, and that's just horrific. And it's a natural disaster. Looks like insufficiently mitigated. We didn't fight the fire very well, and and it's still going on in some places and may get worse. You never know. And so there's a lot of recrimination. But the first thing to start with is, what a terrible thing to have your house burned down and everything in it, and people killed. And then I'm reading that a lot of people don't have insurance, and there'll be insurance companies go broke over this. And so it's a terrible, terrible thing.
One of my house guests, a refugee from the fire, their house is standing. It's orange now. It used to be white, but it's in Mandeville, Camden. So it's still standing because it was the second surge of fire. The third is ongoing, and we'll see if it's over by next week. But in the second surge, they had to evacuate, and so they are refugees in our home. And Leonard, and Leonard worked for one of the home builders, and you've known him for a long, long time. He's 90 years old, and he's a wonderful man. And we just keep talking about how could the government have failed so comprehensively. And all I keep telling people is it's America. It's the California Chernobyl. It's the unveiling of a systemic collapse of the ability to get anything done or do anything except seek pensions. And I don't know if it will change California's politics. You and I had our disagreements with Governor Wilson, but Pete wouldn't have let this happen. You know that, and I know that. Pete's your friend. He's my friend. It would not have happened under Pete Wilson. Do you agree with me?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell two stories about people I know from California. One of them you know well. I can't remember the name of the guy, but I once heard a talk by the guy who was a senior person in the Department of Water and Power. And, of course, the Department of Water and Power in Southern California is a historic agency that has done the most marvelous things. And, bringing water to the desert so people can live. And he was under attack in this talk, and he said, "You're asking me to choose between fish and people. And I don't find that a very hard choice." And I just admired that guy so much. He was an engineer by background and practice. He'd risen to some high place. And I just thought, what a magical thing, that he's a public servant and he wants to give people water. He can't live without it. The other one is about a friend of ours, Tom Tate, who was the mayor of Anaheim. And I'm still quoting that guy 20 years later, because he used to go around the city saying, "We have three objects: safe, clean, and well-maintained. That's what we do," right? Now, look down the list of the departments and activities and where the money is spent in the city and counties of Los Angeles, and you'll see that the list is very long. And safe, clean, and well-maintained is overwhelmed by the other things. And that's a point about government in general, right? It's jobs. As it does so many jobs, in some ways all the jobs, it doesn't do its job as well as it used to.
I had a call last week, and the caller was Constantine, living in California, an emigre from the old Soviet Union, who said in 1986, when Chernobyl happened, the mask was stripped off on all of the Soviet complex failures, how systemically bad they were at everything. And everyone became aware that Chernobyl was a disaster of human making, and it could have been prevented, and it could have been dealt with. And they lied about it and lied about it and lied about it, and that he thought it contributed to the Soviet Union's fall. Now, I'm not calling California the Soviet Union. I just think it's a pension-seeking bureaucracy of hundreds of thousands of people, from a kindergarten teacher who loves children right up to a time-serving bureaucrat at the Department of Fish and Game who hadn't been in the field in 20 years. What do we do, Larry Arnn?
Well, we have to have reform, right? The big changes in the government are, they amount to what we in political philosophy call a change of regime. I've now summarized the things so many times I can remember it all. In 1930, the government consumed, state, federal, and local, consumed 12% of the gross domestic product. It's a touch over 50% now. And in 1930, of the 12%, over 60% was cities, counties, and towns. That's about 18% now. The federal government in 1930 was 23%. Now it's over 60%. So what we've done is we've moved money out of the private sector into the public sector, which is very sensitive if you're going to have a liberal society. That is to say, people take care of themselves and have their freedom. And then we've moved it away from where they live to a treasury, as I like to say, far, far away. And so these infrastructure things. The infrastructure of America is crumbling, and government has never been so big. And so why, the infrastructure of the Department of Water and Power of Los Angeles is one of the great public service stories in the history of the country. But now it's insufficient. So that's just a shame.
So broken.
Yeah.
Not just a shame, a tragedy. More coming up with Dr. Larry Arnn. A disaster. Paralysis is set in at every level of California's government. More on that coming up. Hillsdale.edu is where you find everything. And Hugh for Hillsdale.com for all prior dialogues. We'll be back with Dr. Arnn after a break. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt with Dr. Larry Arnn. Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. It's just Dr. Arnn this week, and we're focused on the here and now because of the fires. And Dr. Arnn and I know Southern California pretty well. What have you got your eyes on, Dr. Arnn?
I looked up the head of the fire department and the head of the Department of Water and Power coming under attack. And I looked them up, and they've got long experience, and they've won some awards. And I read that the fire chief has personally fought a wildfire. But then, on the other hand, do they really have their eye on the ball exactly? Because they've spent a lot of time worrying about what color people are and sex people are, instead of whether they're great firefighters or not, or great engineers to get the water where it needs to go. And I'm not even saying we know that the people are not qualified. What I'm saying is they weren't necessarily chosen for that reason. And that's a problem.
I don't know that anyone can deny that the DEI plague on government is deep in California. What I think I am most pessimistic about is the response. It is like the response of Afghanistan, the Pentagon and the President Biden to Afghanistan. He's leaving office on Monday. We get Donald Trump. We'll talk about that a little bit. And not one person has resigned for anything from start to finish of the Biden administration, except in protest over his support of Israel. That's the only thing that people have quit over. And do you expect anyone in California, anyone at all, anyone from the highest to the lowest job to say, I am sorry, I did not do my job. I am resigning in shame, but in atonement for the failure of my ability to do my job. Do you expect that to happen?
Well, I'll drop my hat. No, that's not the tone. The solution, by the way, in California is the same as the solution in the country, because these are national problems that are just particularly acute in California. The solution is in the people, and they've got to vote to change things. And they all, they have an interest in doing it because, I'm an academic who runs a big old business. And I've learned a lot from that, also from reading Churchill and Aristotle. Top down is not the way. That's not the way the Constitution of the United States works. You don't govern properly by making lots of rules under pressure from lots of interest groups. What you do is state goals and work with people who've adopted them and will pursue them independently and in good order in cooperation with each other. That's the American government. Tocqueville, in what I think is the most powerful part of democracy in America, it's about townships. And there's a wonderful paragraph. And he says, in Europe, when people see a public official, they see force. In America, when they see it, they see a right. And therefore, he goes on, that's the transition. In the same paragraph, he says, and therefore, if they see a public need, it does not occur to them to petition the government. Instead, they form a committee and place themselves at the head of it. Form a committee and place themselves at the head of it and get to work. And maybe it would be more efficient if it was all centralized, but it couldn't achieve half as much. And that's the point. It's in a society that's everything is rules. Like I'm reading about a big reservoir that's empty right now.
Oh, Santa Ynez.
And why is it empty? Because there's an EPA requirement that it have some kind of cover on it, and the cover needs to be maintained, and they haven't maintained it. And, there's no water. And, we know It's notorious. All you got to do is go to Central California where the farmers are. They need water, and we won't trap the snowmelt sufficiently. And so untold amounts, massive amounts of water flows into the Pacific Ocean.
Because we put a fish, the delta smelt, ahead of people. Yeah. Dr. Arnn, I want to make sure I get to the critical question that is before the federal authorities. I talked to Senator Thune this week about it. Speaker Johnson has spoken about it. Should aid to California be conditioned on reform? And I didn't tell him anything he didn't know, but I said to Leader Thune, there's a famous Supreme Court case, South Dakota versus Dole. You get no federal gas tax money to maintain your roads unless you raise the drinking age to 21. Heavy-handed federalism, perfectly constitutional. There's a spending clause. You are allowed, if you're the federal government, to blackmail the states into doing what is appropriate. In this case, nothing will get rebuilt. Let me actually talk with you about Britain after the war and what was done well and what was done not well. Nothing will be rebuilt well unless it is done from one sole authority. And I know that that's controversial. In fact, I'm sure Dr. Arnn's probably going to disagree with me about this. Don't go anywhere, though. He's going to disagree with me after the break. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. You ought to go and subscribe to Imprimis right now and go and sign up for some of their catalog of wonderful video courses. And, of course, Hugh for Hillsdale.com, all the prior Hillsdale Dialogues, hundreds of them. I'll be right back with Dr. Larry Arnn.
Hillsdale College is a small, Christian, classical liberal arts college that operates independently of government funding, and we want you or your son or daughter to apply. At Hillsdale, students grow in heart and mind by studying timeless truths in a supportive community dedicated to the highest things. Hillsdale College costs significantly less than other nationally ranked private liberal arts colleges and receives regular recognition as a best value, and nearly all students receive financial aid. Our robust core curriculum, vibrant student life, and 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio make for an education like no other. For more information or to fill out an application, visit hillsdale.edu/info. That's hillsdale.edu/info.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Larry Arnn is in the house. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. You know that from the music. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, including the applications you need. When we went to break, I was talking about the federal government having a role here, Dr. Larry Arnn, and I base that based on experience. And an old boss of mine in the White House, Dick Hauser, ran the Pennsylvania Avenue Development Corporation successfully for many years. I wrote a column about it this week for Fox News. Said they need to stand up a federal corporation, staff it with people who know about development and building and planning, take care of the homeowners and the property rights, and blow off the Coastal Commission, blow off the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the California Department of Fish and Game, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the EPA that wants a cover on the reservoir. They have no authority over this corporation, or you don't get any money, California. What do you think of that? Because I think that's the right approach.
Well, you and I actually differ about the spending clause, although you're correct about the way the courts have ruled about it. That's right. If they're going to give the dough, then, under the processes of the federal government, which is a representative government like the California government, they can put conditions on it if it's legitimate for them to give the money at all, which is what I doubt. In a better day, it's an interesting thing. As a share of the total government pie, the state share has remained relatively consistent, somewhere in the 20s. It's the federal and the local that have swapped places, see, the federal money, the way that works is, the spending power, which is the only part of the Constitution I know of that James Madison said was badly written because it was misunderstood. And what it says in Article 1, Section 8, there at the beginning is it can spend money for the general welfare. What Madison said it meant was they can use the money to pay state debts and other pre-existing obligations if the money was for the general welfare of the country, not a particular state. That's what he says it means. Never mind. It doesn't mean that anymore as we read it. So what they do is they give some money. Education is a great example, too. The education department, as these things go, is not that big. But they give money, and it looks like free money to the localities. If it doesn't come to us, it's going to go to some other state. They're very ready to spend it profligately. And so conditions on it, and the federal government has an obligation to see that the money is properly spent if they give it. And so what you're saying is they should put some conditions that will prevent this from just burning up in a fire or washing down into the ocean, which is what's going on right now.
And prevent another thing as well, which is brutalist architecture. You talked earlier about how beautiful Pacific Palisades is in Malibu. If you let the wrong people decide what to do, you will end up with the outskirts of St. Petersburg, which are rumbling ruins of Soviet brutalism. And we need beauty. We need Duncan Stroik to actually be the guy. I don't know if he would ever even want this job. Duncan Stroik is probably America's finest architect. He did the chapel at Hillsdale, the chapel at Tom's Corner. We actually need him to reimagine things, because if we leave it up to these gray, nameless, faceless, tens of thousands, and I do not exaggerate, bureaucrats, it will never get done, but what gets done will be ugly. That's my prediction. What do you predict?
So in where Duncan Stroik teaches Notre Dame, there's a guy who might actually do the job you want. His name is Phil Bess, and he's an expert in the new urbanism, which is classically affected planning of cities so they're livable and beautiful. And there's a lot of cool. He did a plan for Hillsdale, Michigan, some which parts of which are going to be implemented, and they're just very good at coming in and figuring out how to make a livable space that's lovely to look at. Those are in some ways synonyms, and and that there should be, and there's I think, by the way, as we talk here right now, that we could be on the verge of the greatest revival in in my lifetime in America. There are just exciting things going on, and they're going to be very controversial, and there are going to be fights about them like crazy. But I can tell you there's a lot of determination, too. And I think the people have seen bureaucratic government in its full flourish in the COVID crisis and the lockdowns, in these fires, in a lot of things like that. And I think that they're concluding that this doesn't work very well. And so we should change it.
To put a point on that, because we're running low on time, the administrative state failed during COVID, and it failed during the fires. What more do people need to see? So which party is in favor of growing the administrative state, and which party is against the administrative state? The Democrats want more of it. The Republicans want to hack away at it. I think it's a pretty clear choice. You're nonpartisan at Hillsdale, and you have to be. But is that a fair summation of the administrative state's centrality to all of this?
Yeah, we not only have to be, we wish to be. We are partisans of the Constitution of the United States. Lincoln said, stand with anybody who stands right, stay with him, he stays right, part with him, he goes wrong. And so that's right. I do think that party difference is accurate as it's stated today. And this claim that if you give me a lot of money, I will use it to help you, rings a little hollow these days, doesn't it?
No, in the ashes of Southern California, a beautiful place that we both love and go to often, it rings very hollow. That is it for this week's Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Larry Arnn. We will be back next week with his colleague, Professor Daniel O'Toole, talking about the Republic as we wrap up a many weeks journey through that. I want to remind everyone who's a new listener, everything Hillsdale is at hillsdale.edu. Hillsdale.edu for all the video courses. The Imprimis sign-up is absolutely free. And all of the Hillsdale Dialogues, all of them, hundreds of them, at hughforhillsdale.com. You can find Dr. Arnn and his many brilliant colleagues talking about the greatest works of our time, the greatest issues of all the ages, all collected at hughforhillsdale.com. With that, thank you, Dr. Arnn. And I forgot one thing. Imprimis, the best speech digest delivered the old-fashioned way via snail mail, is absolutely free. Everybody who gets it loves it. 7 million people get it. Join the club of the smart people. Go and sign up for free for the Imprimis at hillsdale.edu. All the Hillsdale Dialogues at Hugh for hillsdale.com. Coming back with a special message. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.